Sarah, an Irish single mother, moves to a rural home with her son Chris in an attempt to start over. Sarah nearly runs over someone in the middle of the road with her automobile while they are traveling there. Sarah goes to check on the stranger after making sure Chris is well. It turns out that the stranger is Noreen, an elderly woman who is often muttering, "He's not my son." Sarah presses Noreen for a response, but she comes across as incredibly spooky as she turns to face Chris. Choosing not to take a chance, Sarah simply grabs her son and her car's damaged side view mirror before leaving. Although raising Chris by herself is difficult for Sarah, and occasionally they have arguments over trivial matters like Chris' particular dietary restrictions, their relationship is generally strong. In addition to giving Chris constant embraces and declarations of love, Sarah and Chris play a little game in which they make goofy faces at each other to make each other laugh. Chris tears one day during lunch because he discovers a spider in the kitchen. Chris is upset when Sarah catches it and lets it go outside, leaving open the possibility that it would return. He asks Sarah why he didn't accompany them after becoming enraged and adding that his father would have killed the spider. Since it's difficult to explain, Sarah simply answers that it's complicated, which infuriates Chris even more. He then kicks the spider, accuses his mother of being untruthful, and flees into the woods. Sarah chases after him, feeling the wind pick up speed as she travels. She is startled to see something both wonderful and dangerous at the same time, a massive sinkhole. Before she can make a decision, Chris shows up behind her. Knowing that she is upset, he apologizes for bringing up his father, so Sarah gives him a hug and leads him away so he won't notice the hole. Sarah makes sure to lock the back door before turning in since she hears it creaking later that evening. Chris starts attending a new school, but he finds it difficult to make friends. Chris is reluctant to sign up even after Sarah gives him a flyer about the school's upcoming talent contest, telling him that doing so would help him make friends with his peers. Later, as everyone is telling wild tales at a dinner party that Sarah goes with some new friends, including her employer Louise, she learns about Noreen, who is thought to be insane by everyone in the community. It took 3 teachers to get her out of her son's classroom after she erupted into a fit of yelling and general mayhem many years ago. When Noreen was released from a mental health facility some months later, she ran her son over with her automobile. The child had been moved to a different school. No one knows for sure if it happened accidentally or on purpose. Sarah finds it difficult to fall asleep when she gets home because she is acutely aware of the wind blowing and all the creaking noises in the house. She hears a bang on the door and quickly leaves her room to see how Chris is doing, but she cannot locate him anywhere in the home, not even in his bed. When Sarah rushes downstairs and discovers that the back door is open, she becomes worried and grabs a flashlight to go hunt for the boy in the middle of the night. Sarah doesn't spend much time in the forest at this hour because it is dark and eerie. She leaves as soon as she hears some unusual noises and returns home to notify the police. She ends the call, though, as she turns around and discovers Chris standing outside his bedroom door, claiming to have been there the entire time. When Sarah visits the doctor the following day, he inquires about any prior history of worrying and examines the scar on her forehead, which was caused by an accident that occurred a year earlier. The physician determines that she has to take some sedatives before going to bed. Sarah is more certain that she is experiencing anxiety problems after returning home and is shocked to see Chris in the kitchen moments after calling him. She starts taking the medication before going to bed. When she wakes up the next morning, Chris is there with a bouquet of flowers that he brought in from outside. Following her reprimand for him departing when he wasn't meant to, Sarah embraces him and accepts the present. When Sarah gets Chris up from school the following day, she finds that he has made a lot of friends, including a child who used to tease him. When they see Noreen on the road again on their way home, she and Chris can't take their eyes off of one another. When Sarah tries to persuade Noreen to move by honking, she whispers, "It's not your boy," and stops short of getting out of the car. Noreen's husband abruptly interrupts them and apologizes to Sarah for not watching over his wife more carefully. Using the diversion as an excuse, Noreen approaches the car and begins pounding on the passenger window while yelling, "It's not your son." Day snatches his wife to prevent her from following them, but Noreen never gives up trying. Sarah quickly drives away. When Sarah decides to stop by Noreen's house the next morning while dropping Chris off at school, she discovers Noreen dead on the floor with her head buried in the ground. Later, when the police stop by her house to get testimony, Sarah observes that one of the officers is arm wrestling Chris to divert his attention. She briefly believes she sees Chris utilizing extraordinary strength to prevail, even breaking the officer's wrist, but it turns out that she is merely seeing things in her head. After that, Sarah realizes that her scar is bleeding for unknown reasons when she takes a shower. When Sarah returns to work the following day, Louise brings up Noreen's passing first. Sarah shifts the conversation to parenting, admitting that there are moments when she looks at Chris and does not recognize him. Louise, a mother of twins, reassures her that this is normal and simply another adjustment to deal with as your kids grow up so fast. Afterwards, Sarah goes to Noreen's burial in her home, where she discovers that there are numerous mirrors hanging in each room. However, today, they are covered in black fabric. Sarah seizes the opportunity to question Noreen why she stated that Chris was not her son when a distraught Day stops by to have a drink with her. Day clarifies that Noreen did just that. Following their son's 8th birthday, she began to notice subtle personality changes in him and eventually came to believe that he was a fake. But Day, who had failed to notice the youngster on the driveway, had killed the boy, not Noreen. Sarah makes every effort to return to her regular schedule as the days go by. Finding Chris's favorite action figure on the ground, she goes to investigate the sinkhole where she hears incoherent whispers while racing through the forest. Later on, during lunch, Sarah confronts Chris about the toy after witnessing him happily eat a meal he used to detest. Sarah confronts Chris, who is denying leaving the house, by showing him the action figure and asking probing questions until Chris loses his cool and throws the table at her with unusual force. Upon realizing his mistake, he apologizes and retreats to his room. As dusk approaches, Sarah hears strange sounds emanating from Chris's bedroom. As she approaches, she uses the keyhole and the opening beneath the door to spy on him. Through these openings, he is able to watch a startling scenario in which Chris is crawling about the room on all fours and catching and eating a spider. Sarah can no longer take this and flees back to her bedroom, where she says goodnight as usual to Chris when he comes to check on her. The doctor sees Chris the next day with Sarah and during the examination finds nothing wrong. When Sarah confides in the doctor that Chris's behavior is changing, he expresses further concern for Sarah's mental well-being and questions whether Chris's father intentionally inflicted the scar rather than an accident. Then, Sarah makes the purchase of a hidden video camera, which she conceals in Chris's bedroom wall. Sarah chooses to stop taking her medication that evening. Chris continues to eat a lot of food in the morning. Chris touches Sarah's scar, forcing his fingers into it. Fortunately, it proves to be nothing more than a nightmare. Sarah attends Chris's school's talent performance in the afternoon. The song that his class has selected to sing during their choir performance is about a hole in a bog. All of a sudden, the room darkens and everyone nearby vanishes, leaving Sarah on stage by herself with Chris, who has taken to reading the words in a tone devoid of emotion. Sarah flees down the hall, but she is unable to locate an open entrance to let herself out of the building. When Louise discovers her and inquires as to what is happening, Sarah replies that Chris is not her son. Speaking of Chris, she flees once more when he shows up with his teacher at that very moment. She succeeds in leaving the building this time, and when she gets home, she gets the video camera so she can watch the film. She decides she needs a second opinion after seeing what she finds there, which is rather scary. She visits Day. The man greets her once more and tells her that Noreen hung all the mirrors because she always wanted to be sure her husband was the real deal and only mirrors can disclose the truth. Sarah plays the video for him and says that Chris is also experiencing whatever was wrong with Dessa's son. Day, however, is unable to acknowledge that his son had a problem and breaks the camera by throwing it to the ground. While Day won't acknowledge seeing anything, he also won't label Sarah as insane. Chris is waiting for Sarah when she gets home to retrieve the SD card from the camera. He dislikes being left alone, but Sarah explains that she ran because she wasn't feeling well and her kid gives her a hug in return. After it is revealed later that Sarah has been adding sedatives to Chris' food at dinner, he starts to enjoy another dish that he used to detest. Following dinner, Sarah invites Chris to play their favorite game, but it's clear that Chris has forgotten it. When Sarah informs him that he is not her son, the shapeshifter who is wearing Chris's face snarls and attacks her, hurling her around the kitchen a few times until she passes out. Sarah awakens a few minutes later to discover that the thing had dug her head into the earth, just as it had Noreen. Luckily, the sedatives start working at that point, causing the beast to pass out. This allows Sarah to escape unharmed and avoid becoming too dirty. After bringing Chris back inside, she drops him off on the lower level and uses the damaged side view mirror to examine his face, exposing the hideous absence of features on the monster. When the monster awakens, it attacks Sarah once more, but even with her increased power, Sarah can easily push off the child's body. Sarah locks the door and heads upstairs as the shapeshifter starts to scream like a demon. Sarah can focus on reuniting with the real Chris now that the thing has left her back. She hurries into the forest, grabs a flashlight, and approaches the sinkhole, allowing it to engulf her until it drops her within an underground passage. Despite how small the area is, Sarah tries to squeeze through it until she enters a larger cave. Along with a lot of human bones, she discovers Chris unconscious and swiftly takes him up to take with her. At that point, Sarah also learns they are not alone because a group of anonymous monsters are waking up and preparing to pursue her. One creature can only enter the tunnel at a time, which makes it even more difficult to navigate when pulling a child. When the shapeshifter manages to seize Sarah's wrist and replicate her face, Sarah strikes it with her flashlight until it releases her. After emerging from the hole, Sarah makes sure Chris is still alive by checking on him when he awakens. Sarah rushes back to their house, but when she gets there, the car's doors are locked. Sarah leaves Chris by the car and goes inside to get her keys, only to hear the false Chris calling from the basement. She can only light the house on fire before driving off with his son in tow in order to securely leave at this point. A few weeks later, mother and son had moved to the city and begun a joyful new life. Chris's face is constantly being double-checked by Sarah through photos, and their new house is covered in dozens of mirrors. To ensure you never miss any updates on new videos, kindly click the bell icon, subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching.